Welcome to the Second Line Show. I'm Nola Nash. Let's let the good times roll. Welcome to the Second Line Show. Once again, I am your host, Nola Nash, and we have got a great group of folks with us tonight. We're going to have such fun talking about some interesting issues. I've got another New Orleans ghost story for you, and a little bit of fun that we're going to have at the end in our Lagniappe section. As you guys know, we do this all the time. Also, keep in mind that we love to have your comments and questions as part of our discussion. So go ahead and start getting those into the chat. If we don't get to your question during the show, I know I go back through the different locations that we're live, and we're live in several tonight. And I go back through and I answer, and I know often that the guests do as well. So we'll get to what we can. Go ahead and post those now, get them going. And as anything comes up that you think of, have a question, a comment, keep popping those in. I will keep checking the chat. So make sure that you are doing that. Also, I want to give a big shout out to our authors who are here with us today. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves as we go around. Let them tell you a little bit about what they write and their books that they're out. They can talk about any of those things. And let's see, we've done how you take your coffee, what your favorite color is. Let's see, what's your favorite board game? So that's what we're going to end our introductions with today. So I always think of these as I go along. I never have that part planned. So, all right, since Miss Bette Crosby is right here in the Brady Bunch squares, I'm going to go first. So, Bette Crosby, introduce yourself, my dear.
My name's Bette Crosby. I write, basically, I consider it women's fiction, but it's probably more mainstream. My main thing is that I write about characters. I write about life stories and ordinary events that take people into extraordinary places and extraordinary circumstances in their life. I spend more time writing about the character and the character's internal feelings than I do a lot of description. I think that what you see in a person is the inside. That's the part that's the most interesting. What you see on the outside is what everybody sees. So I guess that's kind of like the short description. Some of my recent books were Emily Gone. That one was a bestseller. That's a story of a kid that's set in the 1970s. And A Million Little Lies. That's my most recent. I read a lot of things that are set in the 50s, 60s, and 70s because I love the era. It just takes you back to a time that's fun to work with and fun to know.
Sounds great. Did you get the spider, Tommy?
No. No, I'll explain what I was doing. I was listening to Bette Lee, though, but the spider's still there.
Tommy spotted a spider right before we went live. It's directly over his head. So
every time.
We'll either see it drop down like he's Little Miss Muffet, or Tommy's gonna like just take off to kill it. Great. Yes, it's going to be awesome. Getting lots of greetings today and questions, but great feedback over here from Christine Davis, who says that Million Little Lies is her favorite book. Awesome. And Sharon is here from Minnesota. Nice. So far, I can see everybody's names in the comments, but just a reminder to you guys commenting, if you haven't given StreamYard permission to access your Facebook, you will have no name for us on here. So go ahead and put your name in the comments just so that we know who you are. Just say, hey, it's whoever, if you haven't done that. All right. Barbara Conrey, you're on deck.
Okay.
Tell us all about yourself. Oh, wait, Bette Lee. What is your favorite board game?
Oh, gee.
Come on, Betty.
Bits and Wagers. That's
such a fun game. I play that at my brother and sister-in-law's house. Bits and Wagers.
That's probably one of my most fun. Monopoly takes entirely too long. It's a commitment.
It's like Risk. You're going to be playing that for a month. You're never get done. That is a commitment. Absolutely. All right. Wits and Wagers. I can totally be down with that. That's like our game night game at my brother's house. I love that one. All right, Barbara. Introduce yourself to the fun folks.
My debut is Nowhere Near Goodbye. I debuted this year in the midst of the pandemic and all that good stuff. I'm a late bloomer. I just turned 71, and this is my first book. It's always been a dream of mine to write a book. I tend to tackle serious subjects. The book is about a brain tumor, glioblastoma. I had a good friend who's lost a loved one from this brain tumor, and I watched this friend just deteriorate, and I knew it made me angry, and I wanted to do something about it. And of course, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not a researcher. And I knew that the story would make an interesting book. And I took that along with my love of beagles and the fact that beagles are used for product testing. And I combined the two subjects, made the Beagle research project a subplot of the story of this doctor who finds a cure for glioblastoma, but in doing so loses everyone she loves. And I'm hard at work on my second book. I don't know how many books I have in me, but I write every day and I love writing, and I'm just so blessed to be where I am right now.
Well, it sounds like a whole lot of people are really happy to see it too. Yes.
Pardon?
Yes. Well, there were getting lots of comments about your book, so.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I've been very blessed with the reviews I've gotten, with the reaction I've gotten for this book. I didn't expect anything like what's happened. It's just been really a blessing to me. A little scary, but mostly a blessing.
I think it's always scary. I think all of us can probably agree. Like, we worked so hard on that book, and we put it in the hands of the readers, and then it's like, yay, people are going to read my book, and then it's, people are going to read my book. It's the same.
Yes,
it's hard to balance that feeling.
That's exactly how I felt. I was fine, like, with editors, with the publisher, everybody like that reading my book, and then all of a sudden it was people I know are going to read my book. Perfect strangers are going to read my book. Yep. There's a few bad words in my book. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
I think that it's definitely really one of those things.
Yeah, it's really putting yourself out there, and I'm not used to doing that. And it takes a pretty thick skin, I guess, and I'm still growing mine. So, but that's it. And my favorite board game is Monopoly.
So Barbara's not afraid of commitment. We know that now. She'll play Monopoly with the best of them. All right, we're going to come down to Deborah King. And Deborah L. King, we love her. She tunes into the show all the time. We're hoping her sound is working now. So if not, we're going to play charades with Deborah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you! Yay! We've got Deborah. This has been quite the monumental task today. We're so glad we got it worked out. And guys, Darren Strauss was going to join us tonight, and he had another commitment. And so Deborah stepped in last minute. We were welcoming her back as well as welcoming back Savannah Hendricks. So we're so glad to have Deborah last minute tonight. So glad that you could come. You were so much fun when we had you on before. So it was absolutely a joy to have you back on the show again. So for those who were not watching the show that you were on before, go ahead and introduce yourself to the folks, ma'am.
Hi there. I'm Deborah L. King. I am a first-time author. My book is Glory Bishop, and that's the old cover. We've got a new cover coming out, and my second book is also coming out. It's part 2 of Glory Bishop. Glory is the story of a young lady choosing between the love of her life, who's gone off to the Navy, and an older minister who's offering her the world, but she doesn't really like him very much. Let's see. I'm working on my third book right now, which is more in the Glory series. I love Glory, I really do. I am working on NaNoWriMo now.
Oh,
which, if
yes.
you don't know NaNoWriMo, it's basically where you try and churn out a novel in a month, and I'm failing miserably. So
I couldn't do it either. Don't worry. I could not do it.
And my favorite board game, I haven't played it in 100 years, but it used to be the Game of Life before they got all electronic-y and everything, when it just had the little spinner and the little plastic people in the car.
Uh-huh. I've got that game at home. We play that with my kids. We have the old version. And it was really funny one day because we were playing that, and it was my son kept getting all the things, like, you've had twins and whatever. He had so many pets and children in his car that he had to leave some at home. And he starts rotating. He was being really funny. He's like, well, now we got to take this child so they don't feel left out. He was moving his pegs around. Absolutely. It's like, how do you get all of these things where he's got them layered and stacked, and they're all pyramided up in his little car and he's moving around? Life is a good one. That's a fun one too. All right, and we are welcoming back Savannah Hendricks as well. Savannah, take it away, my love.
Hello. So I write basically everything. For those of you who don't know me, I have 6 books out. 3 of them are children's picture books, and the other 3 are fiction adult books. 2 of them are romance, sweet romance. So think Hallmark, nothing sex in there. And then I have a coming of age novel that was released this year. I adopted my mom at the bus station. So I write everything there is out there. I'm currently working on a series, so I'm excited for that. It is a rom-com series, so that'll be interesting once I get further into that. And my favorite board game would have to be Scrabble, because I can't spell at all.
So you like the game that makes you spell?
It's fun to see what I can come up with that's not spelled correctly, and I have to double check it.
I love it. That is hilarious. I've always said that the names of medicines, like the drug company commercials, I think that the people who name the drugs just take leftover Scrabble tiles and kind of just lay them out and say, that's what we're going to call it. So I think that after a long night of drinking and Scrabble, this is how most drug companies name their things. And so that's my theory. It's just my theory. And we've got Mr. Tommy Butler, who's, he's not a contestant on The Bachelor. He's just hanging out with the ladies tonight. Our token guy here in our conversation. We are so glad to have you here. First time on the show. Welcome, Tommy, and tell the folks a little bit about yourself, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name's Tommy Butler. Like a couple other folks tonight, I've debuted this year with my fiction. So my fiction novel is out, and the reason I ran off camera earlier was not because the spider, was because Betty Lee made me realize I should get a copy of my actual book. So this is the book, and just came out. And so I've written different things like Savannah. I mean, kind of all over. I've done some screenwriting. But this book, my debut novel, is, I guess you'd just call it literary fiction. It is about kind of, not to be too facetious, the meaning of life and why life can sometimes feel so difficult or empty when it really doesn't seem like it should, and what we can do about it. And it's about a main character who's going through this and kind of trying to be happy in life and his adventures. And then interwoven through that Nola was talking about earlier, are these more fanciful, fantastical vignettes about the afterlife and the before life, and how that all weaves into Elliot's journey in this life. And it all kind of plays into the theme of, how can we be happy? Like, what's going on here? And my favorite board game, it's a tough one, but I'm going to go with Balderdash, which used to be called Dictionary. You know that one? So you find the hardest words in the world. You make up definitions. You have to guess the right definition. Yeah.
Yep. And then you have to decide. You have to decide who's actually telling the truth about the definition, isn't it? Yeah. I love that one. That one's fun too. Those are all very creative. I guess I should say what my favorite board game is, and my favorite board game is Wahoo. I don't know if that's like a family thing. It's kind of like a Parcheesi kind of a game, but it's called Wahoo, and it's played with marbles, and you move them around a board, kind of like you would like just going around. You have to go find your little home there. But when I was a kid, that was like the game that we played all the time. And my grandmother, if we won, we had to run around the kitchen table yelling Wahoo, like we were crazy people. Like that was her thing. If you win, you have to run around the table. But my grandmother was one of the most competitive game players I have ever known in my life. And she would play Tiddlywinks with us, and she never let us win. She was really good at Tiddlywinks. I know it's not a board game, but that woman kicked our butts at Tiddlywinks my entire life. It didn't matter how old we got. My grandmother killed us at Tiddlywinks. I don't know what that says about her. I don't know if she sat around the house practicing. I don't know how anybody could be that good at Tiddlywinks. She could shoot those little things into that cup like nobody's business. Well, I know we touched on some of our themes a little bit that we were going to talk about, and Tommy brought that up about that meaning of life and kind of the unique way that he's approached it, where the characters are kind of missing that part of them that understands what they're there to do and kind of what the meaning of life is, and kind of their quest then is to go and kind of find that out. That is what life is all about. And you guys all have some kind of themes of either kind of self-discovery, kind of finding, where you belong, kind of that sense of belonging, and kind of just life, what is important to the characters kind of as they go along. Whether it is life, it is love, it is something that's missing that they are seeking out to kind of make their lives a bit more complete. And I bet in A Million Little Lies, it started with all of these lies where she's basically trying to cover up for a life that was incomplete, and it ends up catching up with her, and then she has to kind of face the truth. So as you're coming up with these and kind of thinking about this, does this come from kind of some deep philosophical thought wandering that you have going on? Is this something that you've seen in just other people, kind of your observations of people? How do you decide which aspects of humanity you're choosing to tackle? And when it comes down to it, isn't that really what we're doing? I mean, anytime that we're talking about these things, it's humanity. And I think that's why we kind of start to see this blurring between women's fiction and literary fiction with these same themes, because male or female, they apply to us all on a human level. So we can kind of talk about it that way. So how do you discover the themes that you want to talk about, or those kind of life lessons or life quests that you guys want to focus on? Where do they come from for you? Anybody want to jump in?
Well, for me,
go ahead. Go, Barbara.
Okay, for me, like I said, it was my friend and her suffering, and the reaction I had to it, because my reaction was anger, which is a very human reaction. Not anger at her, anger at all the things we can do in this world, and we can't do anything about this tumor. And I did so much research on this tumor that John Hopkins added me to their newsletter list, because I was doing research, so that I got all of the up and coming clinical trials. They sent me all of this, what was working, where they were, and it was fascinating. And I actually I watched a brain tumor surgery for this particular tumor, which it's one of the things that they do. They will remove as much of the tumor as they can, but because the tumor has tentacles that weave itself into healthy brain tissue, they can't remove it all, so the tumor just keeps growing back. And that's why people end up dying, because they just can't they can't get rid of it, and it just, every time it goes back, it gets bigger and takes more of the soul. And so for me, it was anger. I think that was the thing, that was the impetus that really started me thinking. And then I have to say, I don't know, just something happened. Like my story was starting somewhere and it ended up completely different from where I started. So please remember that I had no background in writing. So I was just, I was just writing it, and it just kind of took off. So that's my story.
I think it happens a lot to a lot of us. I think a lot of us can agree that our stories tend to take on a life of their own. We start with a framework, somewhere we want to go. And I think that's one of the special things about writing, and knowing that this story, giving that story freedom to take itself where it wants to go, and trusting your own instincts and your own creativity enough to let it go there. And, I know anytime that I've ever tried to force anything that I am writing into the mold that I think that it needs to be in from the beginning, it's never going to be my best work. It's always better if I kind of can just let it flow through. I always say through me instead of, let it come through me, not to me. Because if it's coming to me, it's going to get stuck somewhere along the way. It's got to keep flowing. It's got to come, just like liquid, or it's just terrible writing. I've had many writing sessions where I went, ew, why? And then you just scrap it and start all over again. But I love how you have such a concrete story that has all of the research and everything involved, but it is still very human. It is coming from that very raw, very human emotion, that place of anger and kind of that helplessness of not being able to deal with that situation and fix it. I think we all have that, whether it's with relationships or illness, things like that. We all want to fix it for either ourselves or someone else. And isn't it great that we have literature and books and writing to be able to channel that energy when we can't fix it? We can at least pour that somewhere else. And so I love that that's how you did it. Bette, what were you going to say about where you got yours?
Well, because I have 24 books. So I've gone through gone through a lot of the life situations. And I find what I do is I look at situations that I can identify with, that I can identify the emotions with. It may not be a circumstance that I'm in, like I've never been in a kidnapping circumstance such as Emily Gunn, but by the same token, I could understand that feeling of loss. So I look for a situation that's different than I've done before, which sometimes can be a little challenging because I have done that many. And then I narrow it down to like something that I can relate to personally, because I may do a lot of research on the story, the elements of the story that go into it, but I honestly have to feel that emotion when I'm writing the characters. And, the emotion grows. I always say, I should write the first chapter last, because by the time you get into the story, the characters so well and you're so in touch with them. It's like you're living this your whole self. So I usually write the first chapter and continue on. And then I end up going back and rewriting the first chapter almost all the time, because I think it is being able to grab onto that emotion that you understand. And while you've never been in that specific situation, you understand the what should I say, angst of the situation. So you can feel it from that standpoint. And if you can convey that, you can make any situation believable, especially if you surround it with lots of facts that really are true. So it makes everything seem very, very believable. So if your emotions are true and your surrounding facts are true, the story becomes very, very real, I think, to the reader.
I think so. I think it's definitely, whenever you're dealing with emotions, it's something that we've all felt. And so tapping into that then becomes truly the crux of any story. Somebody's got to be able to relate and hang on to something that they can relate to in that. And with, millions and millions of books out there, I always talk to my students about how it comes down to the human experience almost every single time. If you're going to find something that you can relate to in a book, it's because you as a human are relating to that. You're bringing your own experience and your own, the things that you like to read about, those types of things come into your book choice. But really what we're connecting with in the book is not necessarily because we like witches and wizards, or we like, you know, romance, and we like this, that, and the other. What we like is the challenge, the overcoming of the, you know, the emotion that is actually built into that scenario. Everything else is framework. And so once you find that emotion that reaches out and grabs you, then those are the books that we find are memorable and stick with us for a while. So I think as writers, that's what we find too.
I find it's very easy for myself as a reader to get attached to a character when I open the book. Whereas a story, you know, it can lift you in to a certain point. But I think once you connect with the character, then you're invested. You have to stay and see what happens to them. You can't get that. But if you get into the book, and the story might be a fairly decent story, but if you get 50 or 60 pages into the book and you're not really connected to the character, you're so likely to lay that book down somewhere and just forget to come back to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. My Brady Bunch down here on the bottom. What do you guys think about all of this? How do you guys go about it?
I mean, well, I agree. I think, you know, my ideas for where I've been writing have come from all over the place, and I keep a nice long list of what I think the document is called seeds on my computer, and I just keep adding ideas or snippets of dialogue or themes or things like that. But I think when it comes down to it, it's kind of like what Betty Lee said. It's something that's bubbling up out of me. It's something I actually care about. And maybe that'll run dry at some point. I'll have to look elsewhere for my inspiration. But so far, it's really, no matter how varied the stories have been and the characters and things, the themes or the human emotions you're talking about are things that I personally, for whatever reason, you know, are curious about, struggle with, or angry about, you know, all those things. So most of my ideas have been coming up, or most of the emotional hearts of my ideas have been coming up through my life somehow, through me, you know. And then I try to make them not about me, because that would get boring. So I try to turn it into a character's journey. Yeah.
Well, and we all have some sense of a journey, a path that we're on, something that is deeply and innately us. And I think that when we truly relate on an emotional level to what we're writing, then it comes through. It comes through the work, and that's really where it starts to shine. Again, you can't force these things. It becomes stagnant. Readers can tell if you've tried to force something like that. I think when readers really find a book that they've latched onto, it's because it was that same experience, that the author felt it enough to actually put the words onto the paper. And we get so attached to what we're writing anyway. I mean, there's a reason we refer to them as our book babies, right? I mean, we are truly emotionally vested in every word that we put on the page. And we've, you know, the blood, sweat, and tears, sometimes quite literally, all of those things that make their way into a novel. And it's that emotional connection that I think is important to have as both the writer and then the reader on the other side. Deborah, Savannah, what about you guys?
My ideas mainly come from experience and me asking what if. The day I went into the bookstore, what if I had not gone into the store that day, and what would my life have been if I had done something differently? How would I have felt if this circumstance had happened this way? The emotion comes from mainly, like I said, my experiences. There's scenes in my stories where at least I think they're very emotional. I try to write them the way I feel them, but they're based on real events. So a lot of it's kind of like method acting, I think. I try to feel what the character's feeling as I'm writing it. No, the things that happened in my book didn't all happen to me, but they may have happened to people I know. And I did lots of interviews and research. Oh my goodness. Yeah, research.
I like that part of writing, though. I love the research part. I mean, I'm researching historical fiction. So, I mean, that's well, and all the magic and voodoo and everything else that's in mine. So I like that. I like the research part. I get a little overzealous sometimes, and I kind of forget, like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be writing with this. Like, I'm not a researcher, I'm a writer. I'm gonna actually write. But I love that part of it. And sometimes that can be very inspiring too, because then you find through your research other things that kind of light that fire in you that you want to write about. But I love that you have this sort of butterfly effect mindset in how you're actually approaching things, and what would happen, what would change if I did one thing differently, if I didn't go in there, if I didn't do this thing, or if I did do this other thing. I love that thought process, and it can be a very interesting thing if you really kind of follow that thread, kind of what led me to make these choices and to do these things, and what would have happened if the road diverged differently and I took that other path. And that's an interesting human experience too, because I think one of the things that we do as people is backtrack all of our decisions and think about what we would have done differently, what we would have said differently. But is it necessarily better if we had done those things or made those decisions, or did every decision we make bring us to places we were meant to be? So even that concept is something that gets woven into writing as well, I think, and that people can connect with. Savannah, what about you? You've got so many different genres and things that you write in. You've got like lots of things you can pull from.
I know. I would say I always try to focus on the two F's, and that is faith and fear, because I feel that they are locked in together and they drive us both forward and away at the same time. And
very good point.
When I think back on my books that I've written, I say, oh, okay, that is what those are about. Even though at the time I wrote them, that was not what I sat down and said, okay, make sure that you have faith and fear in this book, is just kind of how the course of that story led itself. Because when I think about my life and other people's lives and everything else, there's always, even if it's small, there's just a little bit of faith and a little bit of fear. Even if you overcome that, how did you overcome that? Was it faith in yourself? Was it faith in something else? And so that is definitely the cornerstone of my stories, whether it's a picture book, Winston versus the snow. He's fearful of the snow, and he has to have faith that he can overcome that. To, grounded in January, and the fear of Ox's MS diagnoses and how he's going to live his life normally. So those are the two key things that always are in my stories, universal themes, I guess you could say.
I think those things drive a lot of people too. That's fear is definitely one. I mean, the types of my Crescent City series is fear-based, I guess. And that's one of the things that I kind of sit back and think about too. If we're looking at human experience, some of it is good and some of it is bad. Some of it is that quest for fulfillment, and some of it is that kind of facing down our own demons, whether they come from inside or outside, and sometimes both at once. And, if you look at humans and their instincts with fear and faith, we have that fight or flight, and it really becomes kind of that conquering the fear or running away from the fear. Can we stand up to it? Can we not? And that human experience can be based in a lot of different avenues. Sometimes it's the fear of the unknown that holds us back. Sometimes we know what it is, but we fear our own inability to conquer it. And so we can approach fear from so many different ways. And I think that particular element of the human experience definitely finds its way into a lot of books because it's so versatile and so many different ways that it can be felt and dealt with. I like that one as my own kind of thing for people to deal with too, is that fear, whether it's fear of failure or a fear of confrontation, a fear of just the unknown, what's out there, what could be, and fear of their own limitations, fear of other people's situations and limitations. There's a lot of different avenues for that one. We had a question from Holly. Where did it go? I had it here just a minute ago. Holly wanted to know what everyone's inspiration is. So we were kind of talking about who our inspiration is. We were kind of talking about what our inspiration was as far as the human experience goes. But do you have certain people, writers, different people in your life, whether they're other writers that you read or other people that come into your life that inspire you to do what you do? We'll take that as a broad concept. It doesn't have to be writing. Anything. Who inspires you? I mean, we're talking about the human experience. And so if we really wanted to kind of hone it in on kind of what we're talking about here. So just who inspires you to be who you are every day, to get out and do what you do and become the person that you want to be, or the writer you want to be.
You know, I know people are going to think this kind of corny, but I'll tell you the truth. I think going to church really inspires me. It really does. It makes me feel like I want to be a better person, and I want to explore that part of life. You know, like I'm not, and I don't write Christian fiction. My characters actually curse a lot. Well, maybe not a lot, but moderately. And by the same token, there's usually an inspirational thread somewhere in the story, you know, at some point, because I honestly feel that it's that inspiration feel about life that gives me the drive to write these things, to write stories that will eventually, you know, no matter how bad it gets, no matter what a difficult thing person goes through, you want to know that at the end of that book, you're going to find a way to overcome the odds, so to speak, you know, to come out with a better than what you might have expected conclusion. And I think that's something that readers look for. I know I do in a book. I hate when I get to the end of a book and it just stops. That's it. Is that all there is?
It's like watching the TV series Lost. It was like I felt so betrayed at the end of that. Like I'd spent all these years watching Lost and it ended that way. So what was the point of all of these nights I spent?
They go through a lot of turmoil and everything. I think we all do. And I think for a reader, it's kind of inspiring to read about people that actually go through a lot of these problems. And a lot of things that I write about are taken from real life instances. One of the books that I wrote that's like a bestseller was I think 2016 or 17, Huffington Post called it the best chicklet of the year. And you know what it was? It was a story that one of my followers had a picture on Facebook of a daughter that was 18 years old. And she said, "This is the daughter that I gave away." And I said, "Oh, she's so beautiful. She looks just like you." And she said, "If you ever want to tell a story from the birth mother's perspective, I'll tell you mine." And she did. And you know what? It was such an awesome story, and it touched my heart. And when she first told me, let me tell you, it's a little colorful. And when she first told me, I thought, my readers are going to have a fit when they read this stuff. I told it as honestly as she told me, and no one was offended by it. And it was a really beautiful story. And you know the offshoot? After the book was published, she sent a copy to this girl that she had been estranged to since her birth. And she said, "I just want you to know that I was your birth mother and this is my story." And do you know what? They got together and they had coffee and they have a friendship now.
That's wonderful. Wow, some of those things.
You know, I've won so many awards. I probably won about 40 awards. This is much bigger. It's much bigger.
Yeah.
It can change somebody's life.
That is an incredible story. What an experience to have.
Something like that, you're doing something that's worthwhile.
Yes, absolutely. What about the rest of you? What or who, I guess, inspires you to do what you do, to be who you are? Write what you write.
I think from
my kids.
From now on, I'm going to have Bette Lee be my inspiration.
24 books, yeah. 24 books.
I know, right?
That is a fabulous story.
It really is.
It's one of the things that I'm really proud of.
You must be so proud. You must be really so proud. And that's just, thank you for sharing that. That's a fabulous story. I think for me, along with Bette Lee, I think I've always been an avid reader, and all of the authors that I've loved, they're all my inspiration.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many authors that I have followed my entire adult life, and I own every single book they've written, and they are my inspiration. But I'm moving Bette Lee to the top of the list because I love that story. And
next time somebody asks us that question in an interview, we're going to say, I'll say Bette Lee. It is an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that with us, Bette. Now, Deborah, you said your kids, and I got to second that one. I think my kids are very much, you know, I'm inspired to be the person that I am because of my kids. I know that they're watching me, and I'm a teacher. And so I have the opportunity every single year, you know, to shape some little tiny minutia of the lives of 150 to 170 this year kids. And I always kind of have to take a step back and look at the choices that I make and think, you know, they have so many ways that they're watching me. And in what ways am I being the example that they need? And because they're watching me and they're looking to me for whatever inspiration or leadership that they look to a teacher or a parent for, it inspires me in return to be that best example that I can be for them. Because I never want them to look at me and think, you know, she steered me the wrong way. You know, you always want to leave either a good impression or no impression on a child. You don't want to ever leave a bad impression. You know, it's like I either want them to go, wow, that's wonderful, or okay, she did not harm me in any like that do no harm thing. But you know, that's that's my kids. So Deborah, your kids, how old are your kids?
They are 31, 30, 29, 19, 18.
You're lying. You don't have kids that old.
Yeah, I do.
I'll take your word for it. I'm not going to believe it for a minute, but I'll take your word for it.
But I've always told them stories. Basically entertaining them. One year we were at Disney World waiting for the fireworks to start, and we were at Epcot, and we were all sitting down by the lagoon, and I started telling them a story. And by the time I got to the end, I looked up and there was like total silence everywhere around us. And I have no idea how many people were there, but there were so many kids standing there listening to my story. And that's what inspires me. Just writing things that my kids can read. They unfortunately don't read it, but one day they will.
I love that. Tommy, what about you? You're nodding over there. You're agreeing. I feel like you've got some thoughts.
I think I'm a little different from those answers, but I think my inspiration for writing has been the things I've read along the way. And I don't have particular authors like Barbara was saying, but there are just things like all of us, I'm sure, along the way from very early ages where something just blew me away. And whether that was my youth was fantasy literature, Tolkien. Later on, I grew up a little bit and started reading other stuff, but it's that occasional book or occasional even movie, a film that just blows you away. And I think there's a part of me that's always been like, I want to be a part of that, or try to be a part of that. I want to do that. I try to aspire to do something so beautiful that someone will respond to it in the way I responded to that. And so it's like this drive to want to try to create something that looks like that, or not looks like it, of course, but makes people feel that way. I mean, those are my inspirations. And so whenever I see or read something that I find that just strikes me as just beautiful, I say, oh yeah, I want to do that, you know? So yeah, I think that's it for me. And it's been all over the board. It's different sources along the many years.
I love that we can pull inspiration from a lot of places that are just the inspiration, that feeling, without knowing that we're going to create something unique, even though that we're pulling from something that has inspired us so very much. I mean, I was a huge Edgar Allan Poe and Jack London. Like, those were my two guys. Like, I loved Edgar Allan Poe, and I still love Edgar Allan Poe and Jack London. And I was kind of like Tommy. It's like these things would be like, that's just beautiful, the way that they said that, the way that they phrased that. I used to read Jack London books with a strip of paper, and I would have to replace the strip of paper every so often, because as I was reading, it would be like a little phrase that I would want to write down. Maybe it was 3 or 4 words, but it was just something beautiful in the assembly of the words, just how he put them together and the power, the impact that it had, or the beauty that it had. And I wanted to remember that. Not for anything that I was doing at the time. It was just beautiful. And it meant something just in that craft that I was witnessing. And, there was something inspiring about that too, because I thought, I want to create something where people are sitting with a strip of paper, writing down the phrases that I've used, and something that is, and they're describing something normal, but they're doing it in such a poetic way that it takes that normal thing and elevates it to something beautiful. I totally agree with that as well. Savannah, what about you?
I would say the readers inspire me, even when I had not released a book yet, just because growing up, I absolutely hated to read. It was like the worst thing in the whole entire world that my father would ask me to do. I just didn't want to do it. And so when I started writing, and I would send, my manuscript out to friends and family and things like that, and they're like, wow, I really love it. I thought, wow, so maybe this is why people are authors. This is why they write, because maybe somebody does actually like their work. It clearly wasn't me at the time. So I am so inspired by readers, because I talk to so many of them. They reach out to me. They leave reviews, things like that. They really inspire me to keep going, keep writing, make something better than the last and the last and the last. I really want to be the Ron Howard of books, so to speak. But it's just the readers. It comes down to the readers. I want them to pick up my book and say, hey, I hated reading until I read this story, until I read your book. Thank you for showing me the love of reading.
That's an awesome aspiration and a goal. And it really is about the readers. I mean, they truly are why we do what we do. I mean, if we have a story to tell, we have something we connect with, but there's just something in that relationship that builds between a writer and their readers, especially as reviews start coming in and we start to have these connections, doing shows like this where we've got, folks where they're commenting and we're seeing what they have to say about it, and getting that involvement with the readers is such a powerful experience for a writer. And I don't know if the readers understand that, that's kind of like a mission to get that out there to the readers. We love that kind of thing. I think sometimes they are afraid that they're bothering us. It's like, you're not bothering me. Please tell me what you thought of the book, connect with me. I love that sort of thing. I mean, that's what we thrive on it. And you're right. It does push us to continue going. It lets us know that what we're doing is worthwhile. And, I'm with you on that one too, as far as, pushing me to do better the next time. You never want to build that relationship with your readers and then let them down. So it challenges you to become a better writer in the process. And so I love that.
I think all right. No,
you keep going.
I think funny thing about readers, and I just want to mention this because I know you have a lot of people watching on a show like this, but a lot of times readers love a book and they're afraid to leave a review because they say, I don't write well enough to write a review. And you know what? I keep telling them all the time, you don't have to recap the book. All you have to do is have one or two sentences that says, I love this. This reminds me of the town I grew up in. Or I love this. It took me to another world. Anything like that. Yes. Just tell us if you liked it. And if you didn't like it, say, this wasn't my cup of tea this time. And that's okay. Not every book is for every reader.
No, and that's why there's so many out there. And I love that point that you made. I mean, I feel the same way. I feel like so many people are like, well, I'd leave a review, but I don't know what to say. I mean, something as simple as this was great, or, must read, go get this one now. It does not have to be lengthy or even, really specific. You certainly don't want to give any spoilers away in a review. It's just simply letting other people know that it is worth spending their time and their money on. And that's really what it all comes down to. And people do read reviews. And even if it's just a few words, it's just giving them a little bit of encouragement to spend some time with a book that you enjoyed. And that's really what it's all about. It's kind of building that. Well, before we get too late into things, we're going to jump quickly into our ghost story for today. So our New Orleans history and mystery is all about the ghosts of Brennan's restaurant. And so Brennan's, if you've ever been to New Orleans, Brennan's restaurant is on Royal Street in a bright pink building as you're walking down Royal. You can hardly miss it. It is one of the finest restaurants in New Orleans, and yet it looks pretty plain on the outside. It does not boast itself. It does not have to. The food does it for it. It's been there for a very, very long time. Brennan's is the birthplace of Bananas Foster. And so Bananas Foster, we know, comes into a lot of things, even pralines. You can find pralines that are Bananas Foster flavor. I've got that one sitting here. And I had to tell this story about Brennan's this week because I had the Bananas Foster praline sitting here. I was watching The Office, and there was an episode where Dwight was eating Bananas Foster. Like, all of this has happened in the last couple of days. Like, well, dude, I got to tell the Brennan's story. So Brennan's has had several owners, and it's actually been destroyed by fire more than once and rebuilt kind of over and over again. And there is a ghost, there's actually several ghosts at Brennan's, and one of them is a man that stands very quietly and watches the guests kind of, you know, overseeing things. They call him Mr. Percy, but nobody actually knows who he is. They don't know where he came from because of the number of owners that the building has had and the number of times it's burned down and been rebuilt over and over again. So they're not exactly sure who he is or where he came from. They just know that he is very quiet and doesn't just, you know, doesn't disrupt anything. He simply watches over things. So occasionally he will be in one of the stairwells. Sometimes he'll appear by the tables or under the tree that is in the courtyard of the restaurant. Also in the stairs, on the stairs, there has been a female presence that has been there a few times. And some of the other ghosts are seen occasionally, but nobody is quite sure who they are, although the claim is that one of them is, of course, the chef who created the Bananas Foster. And he is one of the ones who actually haunts Brennan's. I guess he's making sure that the Bananas Foster is made the way it should be made, and nobody's messing with his recipe. That is the world famous Bananas Foster. But one of the interesting kind of legends about us and the theories about some of the ghosts that are there that can't really be identified is that Brennan's has a large brick oven. And the rumors and the legend have it that at one point, probably, you know, more around the yellow fever epidemics and things, it was actually used as a crematorium. And so perhaps some of those that were actually cremated there in the large brick oven. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but it does have the large brick oven. So the theory is that some of them might have simply been tied to the place there. Other theories about ghosts in New Orleans is that they simply love the city, and Brennan's has some of the best food in this city, one of the finest restaurants in, I would say, the country, if not the world. Brennan's is amazing, world-renowned for its food. And so who would want to leave that? I mean, the food is awesome. So to have the Bananas Foster, and in the episode of The Office, Dwight Schrute is eating Bananas Foster, and he says, this is the second best Bananas Foster I've ever had. And I gotta think, maybe he meant the best Bananas Foster is at Brennan's, where it was invented. So the ghosts of Brennan's, if you go and have a fine meal at Brennan's, you just might have some company, but know that Mr. Percy is just simply overseeing things to make sure that things are going well. So there you go. There are the ghosts of Brennan's, the benevolent ghosts at Brennan's. They're not up to too much trouble. All right. So Tommy and I have agreed that Lost had a terrible ending. And while we may have scheduled a lot of our time around Lost and been terribly disappointed by the ending, as was probably everybody who ever watched it, we're going to talk about In the Land Before Netflix. Back when, you know, dinosaurs roamed the earth, because my students apparently think that I'm ancient and having grown up in a land before Netflix. So what show did you used to look forward to? What was one of those shows that you kind of planned your life around? And it could be a childhood show, something that kind of was your routine, your go-to. I'm not going to even mention Lost again, because while I did plan my time, it does not deserve the time of day anymore. So there are other shows that deserve that credit better. So I think for me, I'll get us going while you guys think. For me, I would say, okay, back to my grandmother again. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and my grandfather. And one of the things that we always did, because I spent Saturday nights there, and I would go to Sunday school with them the next morning. My grandmother was a Sunday school teacher. My grandfather was a deacon. And I spent Saturday nights with them. And every Saturday night, my grandmother and I would watch Hee Haw. And that's what we would watch. We would watch Hee Haw, and then we would watch the Boston Pops on PBS. And so that was my Saturday night. And that was kind of our thing. I looked forward to it. And I don't know so much if it had to do with Hee Haw. I loved Minnie Pearl. I thought she was great. But I don't know if it had to do with Hee Haw as much as that kind of special time with my grandmother and kind of what that time meant. But I always remember as a little girl, I would get so excited because it was time for Hee Haw, because I would sit there and watch it with my grandmother, my grandfather. My grandfather would watch Hee Haw with us, but then we'd have to go into the back bedroom and watch Boston Pops because he wasn't going to watch Boston Pops with us. So what show, whether you were a kid or, a little more recently, was kind of your go-to to kind of look forward to before you could binge an entire series? Yeah, the Three Stooges and Monkeys coming in over here. Bonanza in the comments. Good shows. Good shows.
Well, I'll jump in. I think I'm going to skip my youngest years, but I had the grandmother Thursday night thing too. She babysat. We had some good stuff then. But I'm going to skip forward to a little bit later where, wasn't there a time where there was called like Must See TV, and I think it was Seinfeld and Friends. Uh-huh. But I think Seinfeld and Friends and something else maybe. But that segment, that was a pretty cool night. We used to have a lot of fun.
We did that in college. Yeah, because I was in college when like Friends and Seinfeld and all that, the must-see TV nights. I mean, of course, they spanned, 9 years or something like that. But that was part of college, was like we would get a pizza and like crash on somebody's dorm room floor and like tune in. Yeah. It was like we had to make sure that whatever homework we had, it was on hold when Seinfeld and Friends were on. We were watching that.
Oh, but you know what? I'm going to change my answer, though. I just remembered this was actually before Netflix, and it was only once a week. But when The Sopranos first came out, that blew me away. I loved that show.
That's another good one. Very good one. Ladies, what about you guys? Mm-hmm.
Well,
go ahead.
Once upon a time, there was a show called All My Children. And there was also One Life to Live in General Hospital. And I can't remember, I think it was Jesse and Angie on All My Children. We would cut school to go to the bus stop waiting room to watch All My Children.
I love it.
And then once I got good and old and started watching shows with my kids, it was Famous Jet Jackson, Phineas and Ferb, and Kim Possible.
Loved it. Oh, yes. My daughter's message alert tone is Kim Possible's message alert tone. That's her message alert tone. She's 18 years old. Kim Possible is awesome. And Phineas and Ferb, I love Phineas and Ferb. And thank goodness you can still get Phineas and Ferb, because we had it was a soft lockdown. Like there was somebody robbed a bank in the area of the school and they locked us down for a while and we didn't have anything to do. Like we were supposed to be changing classes and stuff. So I pulled up Netflix and we watched Phineas and Ferb. It's like, what else are we going to do? We're sheltering in place. We make noise. We just couldn't go outside the building or have class changes and stuff. We sat and watched Phineas and Ferb because I knew it was clean and I knew it would entertain the kids.
Absolutely.
I loved it. And that's one of those shows that's so much funnier as an adult watching it, because you get more of the humor. Like as you start to watch cartoons as an adult, even some Disney movies and stuff, it's like there's layers of funny. There's kid funny and then there's grown-up funny. And I love finding this, going back and watching this again. Phineas and Ferb is one of those. It's really good. What about you guys? Betty, Barbara, Savannah?
Oh, I'm going to show my age because none of you ever probably watched the show. Well, maybe Betty Lee, I don't know. Peyton Place. Peyton Place. Yeah, I've heard of it.
I haven't seen it.
I love that show. But
heard that one.
Yeah, that was way before Netflix.
Savannah, Betty?
MacGyver, the original MacGyver.
Yes.
Not the new MacGyver, whatever that is. I don't know. The original MacGyver. I was always sure that I was home to watch that no matter what.
And you knew you could defuse a bomb if you had a paper clip and some chewing gum, right?
That's right. I always have it in my pocket just in case.
Just in case, because you never know. It might come up. What about you, Betty?
I'm not a big TV addict. You know, I don't think there's anything that I'm so committed to that I will, you know, leave what I'm doing to go make sure I watch that show. I've watched all these shows, but, you know, if I'm there and I watch them, fine. If I'm not, that's fine too. Probably the one that comes the closest is I got hooked on This Is Us when it first started. But I'll tell you, I haven't been crazy about it. It's now too much like life. Okay, I saw this on the news. I think that's enough.
It's like, this feels too real for me.
Soap opera fan or something like that. I want to see a story and see the end of it and be gone and move on to something else.
And I think that's why people tend to binge things now, is because we feel like we need to see the end. Like, I need to see how this resolves. I can't linger on.
At least
we have the sense of immediacy.
What you can do is you have a starting and an end point, you know. Like right now we're binging watching Downton Abbey. And I hadn't seen it when it was on because I don't have the patience to go week to week to week and hear what's going to happen to these people. Once I care about them, I want to know what happens now, not, you know, at the end of the season. So
yes.
I'm watching it for, but we've gone through that now, and so we're watching Downton Abbey. That's very good too.
I got to see a Downton Abbey exhibit. I got to see a Downton Abbey exhibit at the Biltmore, and that was really cool. They had some of the costumes and stuff. Oh, it was really neat. So the Biltmore is beautiful, but then they had this whole other area that was set up as a kind of a traveling Downton Abbey museum. So that was a neat experience. But it's a great show too. You know, all of these are fantastic shows.
It's interesting for me, especially watching it now, because I'm working on a book that takes place on 2 different scenes and 2 different time periods, and one of them is the early 1900s, 1901 to 1910, which is kind of like the early beginning of
the early years.
So it's been very interesting.
The fashion in that show is just, the costumes are just phenomenal. And then as it evolves, as the time goes on. Let's see, we've got Magnum PI and the Love Boat. Yes, the Love Boat. Watched that too. What else is coming up in the Doctor Who? Now we got some Doctor Who fans that are, you know, you got to have your doctor, you know, whoever the doctor is that you liked. That's the one you actually followed, right? And not everybody liked every doctor. Let's see, the soaps, the show, the stories. My grandmother called them her stories too. So Deborah, have to watch my stories. Got to watch my stories. Yeah, and she'd sit there on the couch and fold clothes. She'd hand me the towels. You know, I was a little kid. I could fold the towels. You know, it took me forever to fold one towel, but and we're going to watch your stories. I didn't know what was going on. I was 5. But I'm watching stories with my grandmother. Always with my grandmother. I swear, I got more of my TV watching with my grandmother. Although the Friday nights were pretty special for us because we had the family shows that would come on Friday nights. Like Full House would come on, and what was the show with Urkel? Like it was that like block of really family friendly shows. And we'd order pizza and eat pizza out of the box on the floor in front of the TV, big console TV. And that was always fun. We never really got to do that when I was a kid. It was always dinner at the table, TV off, except for Friday nights. And that was always fun. Lost in Space, SpongeBob, Dark Shadows, the 4th Doctor. Which one was David Tennant? Like that was my Doctor Who doctor, David Tennant. I don't remember what number he was. Also good stuff. All right, so we are at our hour here, so we're going to start wrapping things up. This is a fast hour. You guys feel like it went, is it just me? It went really fast. Just a reminder, since I always get in trouble for not plugging my own books, because I forget, I get wrapped up in what you guys are talking about. Crescent City Moon and Crescent City Sin. Crescent City Sin is out now. It launched the end of October. So if you haven't gotten Crescent City Moon yet, you do want to read that before you get to Crescent City Sin. It does pick up right where Crescent City Moon left off. We're talking about New Orleans and creepy things. Here you go. Here's a lot of New Orleans and creepy things, along with some magic, some mystery, and some murder. All those good things in there. So go ahead and get a copy of that. It is Crescent City Sin. Is now part of the Pulpwood Queens 2021 book club, and Betty Lee Crosby has a book in that book club as well, so we're finding out about those things, so that's super exciting. But it's not just about my books tonight, it's about these fabulous folks' books. Look at those gorgeous covers. They are so pretty. So I was putting this slide together, I was like, oh, these are so pretty. All these great covers. And that's the new Glory Bishop cover right there, isn't it, Deborah? This is the right one.
Yes, it is. That's the right one.
There we go. Nowhere Near Goodbye has got such a beautiful cover as well. And of course, Tommy, your book with the leaves falling, perfect for this time of year. Hello. And To Work Out or To Weds. Man, I love this cover. I think it is so cute. It's just precious cover. And A Million Little Lies is just beautiful as well. And I don't care what anybody says. You do judge a book by its cover. So those are some fabulous books inside those fabulous covers. So go get yours there. We've had some great folks hanging out with us. I know we didn't get to all of our comments here. I'll be jumping back into the various groups to make sure that I go touch base with some of you guys as well. Thank you guys so much for hanging out in the comments and posting those comments. You can continue to do that as well. If you're watching this show after the live show, feel free to jump in, post some comments. I'll still see those as those pop up, and I'll get to your questions and give you some answers as well. Or tag the author that you want to direct that question to, and they can see it and hopefully get back to you and get that question answered for you. So lots of great folks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, Tom Baker was the fourth. Sorry about that. I'm getting my Doctor Who doctor wrong, but I'm sorry. David Tennant was mine. All right, so thank you guys so very much for hanging out with us tonight and spending an hour of your evening. It's been a true joy to talk to all of you guys. Deborah, thank you for jumping in at the last minute. I do appreciate you doing that. And Deborah and Savannah, welcome back. Thank you for coming back and joining me again. And Betty Lee, Barbara, and Tommy, please join us anytime you want to. You guys are a joy as well. So thank you guys for hanging out. I do appreciate it. I know our viewers do too. Guys, go out and get their fantastic books. They are good. You want to read these. And if you want to watch past episodes of the show or go back and watch this one and not have to dig through your Facebook feed, you can check us out at Nola Nash Entertainment on YouTube, where all the past episodes of the Second Line Show live. So thank you all very, very much for joining us. Join us next time. We've got another great show for you next Wednesday night. Bye, guys.